everyone. I'm Safra. I wonder how many of you guys are actually listening in. Say hi if you are. It's scary when you're like waiting for someone to listen to you. Okay, so I'm gonna wait for a few minutes till people get online. Can you hear me? Sit on my phone as well. Mm, So, okay, let me start in like a minute. So maybe I should just start till people get online and then maybe I will spend less time doing this. First off, I'm Safra. I run a lot of things, way too many things sometimes. And my friends probably kick me in the ass sometimes for not being able to show up for stuff that's actually more fun and happening sometimes. So I'm not going to tell you my age, but I'm just going to say I'm in the middle of 20s, middle 20s. Um, and so I basically first started off as the child who couldn't figure out what she wanted to do. I was pretty much the girl that didn't really like studying that much, would spend more time online, would rather do more fun things like being with people, hanging out, chilling mostly, I would say in general. And then one day, a friend of mine told me, you know what? You just finished your levels, you've got 3 months off. What are you doing with your life? Why don't you do something which will actually help people? And I thought that was a promising enterprise if you think about it. And that's when I first joined Team Simate. I was only 16. They had no idea what volunteering was, had no idea what I want to do with my life. And then here I was planning this cricket match for blind children. And that was when my love for disability and causes between that started. We first started with planning out a cricket match, but then we went into more interesting things like figuring out how do we actually do it? How do we plan such an instance? Uh, what type of things do we have to consider? Do we have to consider how they walk into a building? How do they leave a building? How do you get such children onto a cause like that? And that was pretty much my start. And I was hooked from day one. I started doing causes pretty much every day. The 3 months passed like impressively fast. And then, of course, everyone's drafted A levels began. I did that, finished somehow. And then 3 years after, I spent doing a lot of volunteering activities and different things because I decided I would just say yes to absolutely everything because that was what I wanted to do and I wanted to learn a lot of things. And I think that's the best way to start because if you haven't figured out what you want to do with your life, just do everything because at one point you're going to realize what what you're good at, what you're bad at, what you're what you really don't know what you're doing with. And if you have like a crazy bunch of friends, they'll probably join you. So my best friend and I did everything. I started with volunteering, so obviously I worked on projects to do with disability foremost. And then we moved on to things like Toastmasters, where I started my journey when I was 20, actually 19, and then worked my way up and became the youngest Toastmaster president. So that was a scary experience because I was the only 19-year-old in the club, along with my best friend, and the all the other people were over 40 to 52, and obviously I was the daughter's age. If I could remember that line, that would be the most of it. Everyone kept going, "You don't know what you're doing with your life. You have no idea what's happening. How can you tell us what to do?" And it was difficult because you're trying to figure out who you are, and then you have all these people telling you, like, this is not how you should be doing it. But I think that experience taught me that, hey, we're young, we probably don't know everything, but if you ask the right people the right questions, you'll probably figure it out as you go. So just take that take it as a yes, go with it. I think some Richard Branson famous line comes to pass where they say, if you don't know how to do it, just pretend you do, say yes, and then figure it out. So there I was leading this team of 40-year-olds trying to figure out how to do that, and amazingly well, we actually passed every single goal we had for that year. And I think that's because you figure out that the main part of what you do is your team. And I think you need to spend a lot of time thinking about who you want with you throughout your journey of doing whatever you're doing, be it business, be it volunteering, be it just, I don't know, throwing a party for your best friend. So think about who you have as a person in your team who could make things happen. Because as always, there's the guys in the team who'll do stuff. There's the teams who slack. There's the guys who come up with the most ingenious ideas where you're wondering how to do it. And that's the core part. And I think that's the way I came up to where I am today, because I spend a lot of time trying to figure out who I want to work with. What do they bring to the table, and what do I really need in the project to make it happen? So that's the way actually we formed Team Muslim Aid when I became president right after Toastmasters. So when I was president, we actually did this training for British Council, which is the Active Citizens Program, where they actually taught us how to figure out what you're good at. And we did a 4-day workshop. It was insane. If you ever get the opportunity, grab it, because you really figure out who you are as a person, what you are with other people, what are the skills that you have, and that self-evaluation will help you to get to where you want to be. Because before you get to where you want to be, you need to figure out who you are and what are your skills. And maybe saying yes to everything is part of it. And then from there, we did 1 year of projects. We started off the year saying, you know what, we're not going to think project to project, we're going to think a year. And we planned out 1 whole year of insanity, I would say, because it was straight off from jumping to one to the next. It started off with like going to orphanages to figure out what they actually wanted. And most times people say they want money, they want space, they want buildings, they want stationery. And actually that was not the case. They actually wanted more children to be in their schools because they already had the funding and they already figured out what they wanted. And here we are thinking, wait a minute, that's all they want? They all just want people to be aware that there's disabilities like this? So sometimes you may think of your problem in a certain way, but that may not be the case. So do your research, figure out what actually is the problem, be it in a company, be it in, like, I don't know, volunteering projects or anything you're doing. First, research. My finance director always goes, data, data, data. So I think that's something that you need to first get into and then figure out what you're going to do with it. Because if not, you won't be working on a project in the angle that would work best. And then from there, we started with going through workshops. We got doctors into villages. We did radio programs so people understood what the problem was. We got them out. We did one whole session where we got parents from all across the country to come down to Colombo, and they actually did it on their own dime. And we had amazing stories where we had a parent who actually said, I had no idea what was wrong with my child. My husband actually was about to leave me thinking that my child was insane and this was my genetics that had passed on. And she literally begged on her feet and cried. And I think that's the moments in your life where you figure out, wow, this is totally bigger than us. So think about what you're doing, think about what you want to make an impact in your life before you actually go into it. And from there, I tried out my cousin, actually my niece, she figured out that TEDx was a thing, and she introduced me to TED.com, where we figured out there's this really cool short videos with amazing ideas which can inspire people to, and these people may not be the Richard Bransons or the Bill Gates, but they may be average people who are with us every day, who can change the world just by figuring out what's this greatest polymer that can solve bleeding, or they figured out they have a disease that a lot of people weren't aware of, and then they're promoting it to say like, look, this is a problem, we need to figure out a solution, and this is how it goes. And then she realized that we can actually apply for a license and we can actually do it here in Sri Lanka. And that was how TEDx Colombo was born, with our team, of course. And from there, it's been an adventure, would be an understatement. We started off with 100 people, we moved on to 500, then moved on to 600, and then moved on to the last one being 1,100 people. I think that when you work on projects like this, you have to figure out what makes you different, and you have to stick by it. I think with TED, it was really easy because it was about the idea. The idea plays first and foremost before you pull through with anything else. And so when we worked on it, it was really interesting because we met amazing people who did incredible things, and sometimes we wondered, oh my god, what have we done with our lives? And I think that that's also a core part of your life, where you need to keep meeting interesting people, have interesting conversations. It's not always about who slept with who or what happened with what, or who went around. I think you need to start debating conversations like, how do we fix this economy, how do we reduce children getting abused, how do we think of social education at a younger age instead of just like when they're 16 and we start giving them sex education. Do we start how do we raise awareness for a cause? Sorry, and then Nathan did it with a walk. What is your cause? So think about it in that unique angle, and bringing that comes out when you are with interesting people. So the people around you make a huge difference, I think, because they're the ones who motivate you, inspire you. They always say what the famous proverb, birds of a feather flock together. So flock with the right people, because they will make you or break you. And that's a lesson that you have to learn the hard way sometimes. I've had people who've tried to like be around me just for like what I am, and then you realize they're not there in that for the right things. So think about who you have around you, think about who are the people that could grow you, and also keep looking for more learning, because as you keep going across, as you get older, you learn that the way you've done things may not be the right way. You'll have to start, like for example, me and finance are like two worlds apart. I would rather run and hide than look at financial accounts. But then when you do stuff like events, that becomes a crucial aspect of it, because without a budget you can't really do an event. So think about who would be the right person to help you on that department, because those people who help you will make you who you are. and it's a struggle doing things, especially in Sri Lanka. You may not get everything you want. For example, funding right now is extremely difficult. Practically have to beg and plead and lie and cheat, not lie and cheat, but you get what I mean, to get to what you are. So think about like what you're going to accomplish, how you're going to accomplish, and plan it well. Like planning is like the ultimate of it. Whatever you're doing, be it work, project, assignment, work, brand new big ass TEDx Colombo event. For me, I have an amazing team with like Ahmed and Hamza and Juzo and Koshal and the rest of them, Natasha, and I think you should check it out. They basically make the event what it is. So think about who you need as a team, who fits into those criteria, because even as a leader you need to choose right. So do that whenever you're doing anything. So a lot of the questions that I've got so far has been like, how do you do it as a girl? How do you do it? I mean, like, it's such a cliche term, but I think that you have to forget that you're a girl. You have to forget that this is about you being a guy or a girl or whatever it is, even if you are a guy, and just think about what you want to accomplish. You need to think about what's your goal at the end of the day. Is it that you want to inspire 1,000 people? Is it that you want to make money like Monica? Is it that you want to just pull out a campaign on something that's really close to your heart? Or is it that you like want to be creative, make your own jewelry line, or whatever it is? You need to stop thinking, what can stop me? What can destroy me? What can, because that negative thinking is not going to get you anywhere. You have to start thinking about how, what are you going to do? What are your next steps? It doesn't have to be immediate. We're not going to solve world poverty in a day, just saying. So you need to think about like how you're going to do it, what are the steps you're going to make, and make that plan and work towards it. And sometimes you're going to fail like miserably, like I've done it millions of times. I'm just not going to say it out loud. And then you need to think about like how you're going to put it together, how you're going to, is it that you need to learn more things? So then there's stuff like Udemy or courses or things online where you can research. I mean, it's not a bad thing to not know something. And the benefits of our era is that we have Google can teach you amazing things that you never figured out. I've Googled budgets to proposals to how to make a presentation, how do you pitch it, how do you make a video, and it's all there, like in the brinks of our hands. So just use it, because if you don't use it, it's a shame. I think I recently had a conversation with two of my friends who were hiring, and they were like, you know what, we don't need to hire degree holders or graduates or PhDs. We just need someone who knows how to Google and get what they want done. And I think that's the crux of it. If you can't do something, figure it out or ask a friend. I'm sure there's so many of you who can pull it through, and you'll get to where you want to be. The other aspect of after planning is getting the right team, which I've been yelling at almost the whole of this conversation. When you've got the right team, they'll help you fix those questions. They'll help you bridge the gap. And if you bridge that gap, then you're going to go far. You can also, it also helps you deal with teams. There are different personalities. They have different thoughts and ideas, but how do you put them together? And that is, and then you need to learn to compromise, because sometimes you may not get exactly what you want. You may not get what you want to achieve exactly the way you want. But if you can work out a compromise where everyone's happy, you may be able to pull a lot of things through which you didn't realize. And that's a great part of what we do. And from there, when you've got the team right, it's execution. You need to start thinking of how you're going to put, when I say pull it through, what are your next steps for this day, for this month, for this year, for this time. And when you've done that and you keep going like, okay, what have I done now? What have I accomplished so far? What have I not achieved? How do I pull this through in the next month? And then that will give you a whole, like, your bar as to what you want to achieve and how do you get there. and then keep pushing it, because every day you learn something new and you gain something new, you meet new people, and none of us want to do the same boring things constantly. We just want to expand, we want to improve. So keep pushing that bar to the point where you know you can do this, because if you don't push the bar, you're stuck in this place where you don't know what's going to happen, how you're going to achieve it, what's your life goals. And I think that pushing has to be there, because if you don't push yourself to do great things, no one else is going to, because you need to achieve what you want to achieve, and you need to do that by raising the bar. So today I hope that all of you raise your bar, because I don't know what your goals are, your aims are, but I think for me it's always been that I started off with 100 people event, now with 1100. I wanted to start disability projects. I started with like staying in a school and trying to figure out what's wrong with them, and then being able to do awareness programs across the country. First, is it like talking about women's issues? Is it that I just stay behind my laptop and say like, look, this is a problem, and just make random posts online? Or do I go there to grassroots levels and say, look, I want to hear your stories, I want to hear what's going on, I want to know for myself what's happening, and being able to use that information to help change, is it policy or mandates, or actually making them do it themselves. Because sometimes it may not be that you have to do it yourself, maybe it's just that you have to show them how to do it themselves. Because if you push them, they might do amazing things that you may not realize, and all they need is that push to say it's possible. So do it. Start today, and I hope that you actually do, and like this conversation is as interesting as I hope it is. So how do you work on a great idea? I think when you work on a great idea, you need to first think of what is your idea. Is it that you, whatever it is, you have to think of your core through line of what it is, and work across on it, on how you're going to accomplish it. Um, Start working on it, because a lot of people in Sri Lanka, especially, I've heard a lot of stories of ideas where it's all in their head. It's all like, in 10 years from now, I'm going to do this, I'm going to build this, I'm going to change the world by this revolutionary education program, but you haven't started work on it. If you don't start work on it, it's never going to happen. It's No one is going to push you to build anything. And if you don't, maybe it's not a big step, it's maybe a small step, but you need to make that step, because that step is what drives the change, and makes it possible. So when you're thinking, like, at some point, maybe you don't start like everybody else, where you quit your job and you change your whole world and just stay at home and stay in front of a laptop. Maybe you start small. If it's starting a business where you sell something, then start doing it mini scale, and then move on to greater things. And I think that that's the only way you can begin, because if not, you're going to just be on your head, and that's a shame, because some of you have incredible ideas. They've come across, but I would totally vouch for you. But if you don't do it, then I'm gonna think, I don't think that's never gonna happen. So push it through. Make sure you do, in whatever way or form. And maybe you don't do it alone. Maybe you get a team, but you need to start off on it, and that's the only way you can do this. The other thing that I've heard is, a lot of people struggle with investment, I think, and as I've said before, like, money is a huge problem. But I think that someone really close to me once said, if you are really persistent, and if you've looked at who you want to fund you, and you actually continuously go, you know what, I'm doing something amazing, I'm doing something impressive, look what I can do, this is how much I've done with this incredibly less funding, and you make it work, then you kind of learn that they may actually want to listen to you. And I'm sure, like, the pick me founders, the I don't know, the surges, um, the quickies, and all of those small companies didn't stop with. I'm sorry. I think you need to start pushing it, and if you have to be persistent with it, because if you are not persistent, then they're going to think that you're not really invested in what you're doing. So invest in it yourself, and then you will see that it may not happen today, it may not happen tomorrow, but if you really push it through, then you will definitely make it happen. I think that so that's an incredible part of what I do. So what do I do now? uh, with work is I actually work for a Kuno company. So it's pretty interesting for some people because they literally think I walk around in garbage. But I don't. So in Sri Lanka, we work on sustainable solutions for all aspects of life. So one is like, for example, the waste management issue. And if you remember me, Toramula, that's something we really wanted to avoid. Unfortunately, advice is not taken, but I think that um, solutions need to be made for provincial problems like that, because if we don't look at sustainable solutions for all the problems that we have in Sri Lanka, we're just going to keep expanding, and we're going to expound to the point where we may not be able to solve it. And that in so like so crucial part of what I do is look at clinical and infectious waste, and how do we resolve that in Sri Lanka. The other part is what are the other types of waste and how do we solve that problem. So in sustainable solutions, I think is the way forward, and I hope that Sri Lanka gets on the bandwagon for it. I've heard a lot of stories about like people using coconut recycling material to make scrapers for surfboards, using upcycled material to make fashion lines which are on runways across the country. I know another one who's been in India recently. So there are fun ways to make things sustainable, and I think we need to touch on to that as well. What I've learned is that everything has an impact that we may not see, we may not hear, but we try to work through that. So I think that if you're going forward, it would be ideal if you think about how you make it sustainable. But that's just something that we need to consider now that if you can see, London is currently under snow in March. So that alone should be a sign of like what's to come in the future. So does Sri Lanka end up under snow? I don't know. Maybe no earlier. But we need to think about what we make as an impact to the world, to our country, to the environment, and we need to think of how we're going to address that. I don't know. If any one of you have questions, you can like comment on the box below, and I'll try to answer them, and then we can move from that. I can answer any other questions you have. But yeah, so you have any questions? I think not. So what else? What have I learned so far? I think that what I've learned is that go with what you're doing, keep going. That's important. A lot of people are going to tell you you can't. I've heard so many lines of, you're a Muslim girl, you should be home, you should be cooking. People have a kitchen, and I am a good cook, but that doesn't matter. I've learned that they tell you maybe you don't have the skills for it, maybe you can't do it. There are people who and then you get the incredible people who actually tell you, you know what, you're doing amazing. Go keep doing what you're doing. Go fight this fight, because if not, so surround yourself with those type of people who push you and make you who you are and address all of that. Also put yourself out there. It's really hard for us sometimes when we do incredible work. We want it to stand for itself, but if people don't hear about it, if people don't know what you're doing, then they're never going to know what you're doing. So sometimes we love being in this silo of things we're doing. We don't want to bridge out. and push it across. But I think you need to start talking. Maybe it's an Instagram story, maybe it's just through your corporate page or whatever, or that you just talk through it in conversations that you have with people at events and such. But talk about it, because if not, you won't get the traction you want. A lot of people are shy. I was too at the beginning. I didn't really know how to push messages across. I think it's only now that I've started like talking about the stuff I do. But do it, because it may look like you're boasting or whatever, but like I think it also creates connections to people who can help you push what you're doing, be it like I don't know monetary, or be it that they just tell you like, you know what, I'm doing this project here, you should totally look into it because it's something that's interesting and it's also somewhere along your alleyway, and then you might have a connection which you didn't really think about before. So that's something that you need to uh, think about. Also, what else do I say? I think that I would end with just saying that keep doing what you're doing. Say yes to absolutely everything. Say yes to comparing at an event, to doing a project, to working on something brand new that you have no idea about. Say yes to climbing that mountain if that's what your thing is, or to bungee jump, or to, hopefully if you don't have heart issues, but just say yes, because yes can change your world. Yes can tell you things you didn't know about yourself. Be it that you're not interested in certain aspects of life, be it that it really interests you and you totally know that that's what you're into. If you take my life, I've worked from comparing to event management to handling. I've had a wedding once that was like insane. To working in sustainable solutions, to working in IT, to working in marketing products, to everything, because I didn't say no and I didn't take what I thought I couldn't do as a reason to not do it. I hosted a teen at radio station once that was like whack. I hope Chassis doesn't like think that I was like the worst host ever, but I tried it and I learned few things that were pretty interesting, and that's all because I said yes. So do it. Go do whatever that comes through your desk or through your face, and just do it. So I have a question of who are the role models of your life. I think my role models are a mix of people. One being my brothers, because when I was a child, they were pretty much the guys who said like, "She's a girl, you can't do this, you can't do that," and it's a normal sibling rivalry which everyone goes through. I mean, everyone who's had a brother would understand, especially older ones. So they say like, "You can't do this, you can't do that," but then I realized that it was because they knew that I could do it, and it scared them. Possibly. I hope my brothers don't hear this. So I think that you need to have your critics with you because they're the ones who would help you become who you want to be. My other role models would be the women and the really incredible people I've met along the lines of my life. Like they've really changed me to open doors, look at new and interesting parts of life. Where, like for example, when I met Aritha, I would never have thought that changing um, the education system at the age of 2 to 4 would really change the way they thought of life, to the point of where he told me that, like if you watch his TED Talk, you would see that this child who had allergies across her whole body didn't like the way she looked at all. And then through his program, she finally walked up to a mirror and said, "You know what? I look good." And I think those stories are not heard of, and they all come in daily conversations. So the people around you in your life will change you, and I think they are better role models than the Richard Bransons or the Warren Buffets or all of that, because they're real and they're with you and they're like the human library that you have. So pitch into those stories because they are definitely my role models. Any other questions? So yeah, so definitely have role models because they're the ones who will pitch what you become, and they really influence you, and they are the people around you that you can have those insane conversations of whatever you want, and do it, because real buffering up a wall is really good, and sometimes you need a reality check to say like, you can't do this, are you crazy? Because some things actually can't be done realistically, and you need that conversation to tell you what can or cannot be done. So yeah, 25 minutes. You've got me for 10 minutes, I think. And the Sakshika proves. What sort of problems you face when you are working? How did you overcome them? Okay. So I've had a mix of experiences. One experience is that for some reason I like guy bosses better. That I've learned because they've, and maybe it's the opposite gender role or something like that. But I think that I've had one instance of like juggling everything, because when you say yes to everything, you have to juggle everything and make sure that you're good with whatever you're doing. So take the time to actually plan out what you're doing, because sometimes you have to say no to some things just to balance your time, and then make sure that you work accordingly. Another sometimes is that like there are instances where at one point, like I do a lot of marketing and a lot of sales, and I think in Sri Lanka a lot of people think that all girls who work in the industry are will do anything to get what they want in terms of a sale, and I'm not that girl. I'm a typical Muslim girl in that sense, so that has gotten me in a bit of trouble, but I've overcome it. So those are sort of problems that you face, and I think you have to deal with it on a daily basis of what you do. The other question is, you have worked in many different areas. What made you get into these focuses? I think like my main interest was disability and women. Disability was because when I started my industry, in my experiences, that was what I started with. And then as I got to know these kids who had these problems, when you've been around them enough, you realize like how incredible they are. They have such motivation. I've had one child who came up to me who was actually deaf, and another one was blind, who said, "You know what? This is our time. This is our life. We should be studying and making the most of it instead of delaying what we could be." And here I was, straight after university, uh, not really figuring out what to do. And here he was, and like studying was like the last thing in my mind. And here he was telling me how to do it. So I think that um, that motivates me is the people that I work with. Um, I think it depends on each person, and that's why I said say yes to whatever comes your way, because you figure out what are your interests and your focuses are along the way. And during that time, I learned that women, disabilities, and of course, ideas are like my passions, and that's what keeps me going. So you need to try whatever that comes your way, and then figure out what is your focus, what is your area, because it may not be the same for me. What motivates you? What motivates me is, if you take honestly, it's when you worked really hard. You've put a lot of time, you put a lot of effort, you've done so much work, and then when that task is done, and you sit there and you realize that that work has made so much more impact than you thought it would, and it has created a difference. That's what motivates me. I've had instances, for example, where parents have come up to me and said like, "Whoa, we would never have known what's wrong with our child if it wasn't for this." Or like, I watched those talks from the TEDx Colombo event, and it motivated me to start my own business, or doing things like that. It's small things that really like push me to do better. And it's also the people I work with, because they are interesting characters. If I say interesting is an understatement. So they really like motivate you to keep going and doing what you do best. What are the advices you have to girls who are entering the corporate sector? I think that when you are entering the corporate sector, know that you're going to be pushed to do a lot of things because targets are as strict for you as they are for everyone else. And you need to be able to manage. Be it, I've worked late hours, I've worked like we've done overnighters, and I think that you have to walk in with that in mind because a corporate sector is it's even more demanding now than it was before. Like it's no longer the 9 to 5. It's also that you need to know your barriers of what you are willing to cope with, and if you are not willing to cope with anything, then you need to put your foot down and say, look, I won't address to this. You need to be able to be a team worker and work with the people around you, and also be able to manage the relationship that you have with the people that you're working with. So go in with an open mind. Remember that you have targets and objectives as well, and you need to work towards them. Don't slack. Slacking gets you in so much trouble. And make sure you have a plan of whatever task you undertake, because if not, you're not going to make it. What did you want to become when you were small? Did it change when you were growing up? Um, what I wanted to become when I was small, I really didn't have a like an ambition or game. I think I wanted to be an artist because I used to paint all day long. I ruined a lot of walls. My mother wasn't very impressed. I painted for hours and hours. I did like an exhibition when I was a child as well, so I thought that would be where I end up. And then, luckily enough, I found a mood point where I started doing graphics. And it really helps when you're in marketing and you do graphics, because you can design that brochure that your agency doesn't understand you want, and then put it all together to form this campaign. So, in a way, I am still an artist in some ways, but just not the old canvas painting sort of way. So I think that's what I grew up to be, combining loves to make it to where I am. So maybe, I mean, I was definitely not the doctor, the engineer, the lawyer, um, the accountant. I did try SIMA, and I realized that that wasn't me. So that was also a yes I figured out, which was the wrong yes to make. And then I said, no way am I doing this. So figure it out, and maybe you might try your love of something in a different way. And that's what I learned. Do you have any other questions? We have 3 minutes. Unless someone wants to continue. We've got... How have your friends helped you in your journey? So my best friend Troby has been there with me from day one. She's gone through talking me through the dramas, the antics, the stuff, and my other best friend Damien as well. So they've pretty much been there through it with me. Um, all of the teams that I've worked in, they are my friends. They've become my friends over time, and I think that's really important for a working relationship, because when they are your friends, and then you know that you don't think of them as employees, you think of them as people who you work with instead of them working for you. It makes a huge difference, and I think that helps you because along with like getting stuff done, you also get to go for coffee and dinner and have like a social experience with them, and that helps you to get uh, work done along with a more enjoyable experience. I think work should be fun as well. If not, you won't get anywhere and you get bored. So challenge, and they're also there to challenge me. I think that's the best thing about them. Where they're not happy with doing the same. Sorry, got disconnected. So they're not happy with doing the same things over and over again, and that should be you as well. Don't do the same thing. Just keep pushing yourself to do something bigger or better or different, and that will be great. What's your favorite TED Talk? My favorite TED Talk is actually by a TED fellow. He actually talks about how he's actually when I met him, he was straight out of university. He was in university, I think. He was 19 or 20 and finished his bachelor's by then. He was like super smart. And he actually created a polymer which when you add to a gushing wound would become your skin and muscle and clean up, like bridge up your wound. So it's actually now used by the US Army in war scenarios, like in Afghanistan and Iraq, to stop bleeding. And here is a 19-year-old kid who just happened to be in Stanford, and is so down to earth and done this incredible innovation of all kinds. And it's it's revolutionary in all senses. And I was totally jealous. I was like, oh my god, I'm never going to be able to do something like this ever. Definitely not the biologist in me, but I think that he was my all-time favorite. How do you find out a plan? I think what you mean is how do you create a plan? I think that it depends on what you're doing. You have to first think about what your vision or mission of your project is, be it that it's awareness, for example. Then what you need to do is you need to do your research. You need to figure out what is the actual problem. What does it what does it actually consist of? Is it that like this many people are not aware of it, or is it that these particular areas of a city is not aware of it? Is it that what are they talking about it? What are your interactions with it? And if you don't have that info, you are not going to be able to make a plan of what you need to do, because we can't assume we know the answer, because we definitely don't know the answer. We need to actually know for sure what's going on. And then when you figure out what the actual problem is when you start figuring out a plan. When you figure out the problem, you have an idea of like where your scope is, because we can't save the world, be it business, be it, I don't know, volunteering or awareness or whatever. So bridge that scope to a point where you can actually accomplish it, and start with small goals. Start with small projects that will get to where you are. And when you've started with small projects, give yourself deadlines of like, okay, I'm going to accomplish this in a week. I'm going to accomplish this in a month, in 3 months, in 6 months, and in 1 year. And when you've got that plan, you need to work towards it. You can't be like, oh, okay, maybe 3 months deadline is a bit too slacky. Let's work it out in 6 months. Because sometimes you need to micromanage. Um, that's a lot of what we have to do, especially in Sri Lanka, is that you have to micromanage. You have to really be on the dot of what your goals are and what you want to accomplish within that time period. And when you've done that, is when you have your plan. So you need to think about what your goal is, what you want to accomplish, research on it to figure out what the actual problem is, work it out accordingly, then give yourself goals to achieve what you want to achieve. And when and keep pushing yourself to do it. And if you need help, ask. That's the biggest thing. Ask for help, because you can't solve the world alone. You need to know what you're doing. You need to talk to people who know what they're doing, and they have experience of how to do it much better than you. Maybe they're in the same industry, or they've done it before and they've screwed up. Sometimes the screw ups are the easier way to know how not to do something. So definitely go out there and ask for help. What is your world view? How do you want the world to change? Um, I think that we have to first start with our world, because we have to start with where we are and what we're doing now, to make a difference. Right now, the world is in chaos. I don't think I have to explain anything more than that, from climate change to politics to growth. So start with where you are and what you can solve in your world, in your proximity, because that's the best way to start. Be a symbol for everybody else, to do better, to be better, to grow better, to have a solution depending on your environment. Because when you've done that, you can start to grow. And there's always the thing of, if you do something that works, you can always amalgamate it to other areas of the world. There are some, like for example, I know a friend She started a mangrove project in Sri Lanka. She's now Forbes 30 under 30, and her project is being done in Bangladesh, in India, in I believe Myanmar as well. And you should check her out if you want. Her name is Anu Kaviratna. And she started small in a mangrove in Moratuwa. So change your world here, in this here, wherever you are, and start small and grow big, because you have no idea how much impact you can make just even in a small community. So do that, change it, because you guys are the ones who can. Any other questions? I think we can do like two more or one more if there is any. Okay, there doesn't seem to be any more questions. But what you can do is, if you do have any later after watching this, you can leave it as a comment, and then maybe I will respond when I see them. But it's been incredible talking to you. I would like to thank the Sustainable Education Foundation for hooking this up and for making this possible. Remember, say yes to whatever comes your way, make a plan, and make it happen, because that's the only way you can make a difference. Don't think about yourself as a girl or a woman or a man or uncle or auntie. Just think of your goal and make it happen, because we have to stop making excuses for ourselves and giving reasons for stuff to not go away. If you want it done, get it done. That's the only way to do it. And fight for it, because every day is a fight and you have to fight for it. If you don't fight for it, you're not going to get anywhere. And that's pretty much my line of thinking. So that's how I've got stuff done. Hopefully, it continues and I keep doing stuff. And I hope that all of you who are listening or watching, um, go out there and do whatever you want, do whatever you're dreaming of, and go do it in whatever small way you can. Because if not, you're never gonna do it. Do it, I'm telling you. And maybe you'll be on TEDx Colombo, who knows? Or on bigger forums like Forbes 30 under 30 or whatever it is. So yeah, good evening, good night. And remember, if you have any questions, you can leave it on the comments and I will respond. Bye.